Okay, is everyone ready? Oh.
Yes.
Hi, Kathy. I can move that jack that's in your way.
Good.
Before we get started, there are extra copies of the agenda and of the minutes on the desk there in front of the window.
Kathy, would you like one of these? I have one. You have, okay. Are we currently live? We are, okay. Let's go ahead then and call the meeting to order at 4:03 p.m. And we'll start with roll call. Craig Pepper, absent. Dave Brennan.
Here.
Mark Tannenbaum.
Here.
I'm here. Jeff Zalonis.
Present.
Jason Wazorek.
He's all on Zoom.
Fantastic. And Chris Kinder.
Present.
Wonderful. Okay, so the first item on the agenda, aside from roll call, is the review and approval of the minutes from our February meeting.
I wrote them.
I know.
Somebody's going to make a motion.
Anyone want to make a motion to accept the minutes from the February meeting? Or have any suggested edits?
I suggest we accept them.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Dave. All in favor, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next on the agenda would be the public comment section. We do ask that if there are folks here who would like to speak, that you limit your presentation to 5 minutes. Do we have anyone who would like to speak? We do indeed. Wonderful. Come on up to the podium here. And if you would, please introduce yourself, your name, address.
My name is Lori Varro. I live at 620 Cherry Street on Garden Court.
Excuse me, Lloyd, could you spell your last name for me?
V-A-R-O.
V-A-R-O. Okay.
It appeared to me from the February meeting that everything has already been decided, given Ms. Meyer's inquiry into having a motion to vote on officially enacting the overlay district as to the West 6th Street Historic District, even though it appeared the majority of the commission members were not even sure where the exact boundaries of that district are. It's okay. This flies in the face of the assurances we received that nothing would be done until there were public meetings. Additionally, since conversations with Tom Hagen and his agents were mentioned numerous times during that meeting, we can glean from that this commission and/or individual members of this commission have had meetings with him. While I understand that with money comes influence and power, please note that while Mr. Hagen is a financial investor in this area, he is not a resident homeowner like the rest of us. And for him, his financial investment in this area is but a drop in his bottomless bucket. For the rest of us who are of moderate means and own homes and actually live in those homes, our investment in the area is much greater. We, however, appear to be a mere afterthought and an annoyance to this commission. I cannot fathom why the commission has chosen the more restrictive method to achieve its goal. Why not a facade easement program? Why not a low-interest loan program? Why not a grant program? All of these options could achieve your goals and, at the same time, provide remuneration to resident property owners assisting with the financial burden of renovating our old homes. However, you prefer to take our property rights by force. Even an eminent domain action pays the property owner the fair market value of property when it is taken. Here, the resident property owners get nothing but headaches and financial hardship. We will be made to fill out forms and pay fees that no one else in the city has to pay. We will have to take time off work to attend meetings with the commission that no one else in the city will have to do. We may be required to pay an architect to submit our architectural drawings. And we will most likely be required to spend much more money for any renovations we make due to the requirements to use more expensive materials. And all of this while living in a neighborhood where we regularly play the game called gunshots or fireworks. It does not go without notice that not one single member of this commission lives in a house that will be subject to an overlay district. Many of you live in the suburbs in vinyl-sided, vinyl-windowed homes and have not a clue what is involved in restoring and rehabbing a century-old home. It's the do as I say, not as I do mentality. Meanwhile, if you had been willing to work with us, the resident property owners, we would have been willing to work with you. I believe you are not acting in good faith and purposely leaving us in the dark. It also seems to me this commission isn't trying to gentrify the area, it's trying to ultra-gentrify the area, making it unaffordable for anyone but the wealthy. At the February meeting, Mr. Zelonis compared those of us who do not want the overlay district to anti-maskers, which I found incredibly insulting. But I have an analogy of my own. This commission is acting like Russia, and we are the Ukraine. Finally, since both Ms. Rosdick and Mr. Wazorek have stated to individual property owners that they may opt out of the overlay district, please put it on the record that we will be holding you to that, and 620 Cherry Street is opting out.
Thank you. Do we have others that would like to speak? Thank you. If you could just introduce who you are and your address, please.
I'm sorry, I'm partially deaf, I can't hear you.
If you could, please let us know who you are. Just introduce yourself and where you live, your address.
Yeah, I'm Tom Maggio. I live at 620 Cherry Street.
Tom, could you spell your last name for me?
Maggio. I didn't really prepare anything to say because after watching the last meeting, I was kind of speechless. The arrogance and the bizarre things that you said about what you're doing and about us specifically. The takeaway that I have is that we're just a bunch of rubes. We don't understand anything. We're like anti-maskers. Right? Right, Jeff? That's what you said. People who are opposed to historic districts are just like anti-maskers. Is this the tenor that you want? This is how you want to represent yourselves? Is this how the city is going to represent itself? I don't think we'll ever get an answer. Let me talk about my credentials. Because I'm not a rube, and I do know about historic preservation. I would put my credentials about historic preservation up against anybody's. We've been a professional planner since 1995. I'm the co-founder of what is now Preservation Erie. I've won a National Preservation Award. I've won 2 awards from Preservation Pennsylvania. And all around this city, there are projects that I've worked on, historic projects, wonderful buildings that we've been able to save. But I also know how to do math. And if things don't add up, you can't do the project. The thing that's kind of disturbing about it is people are just kind of throwing us under the bus here. Oh, we don't know anything. Oh, this is good for us. I've crunched the numbers. I've looked at it. I've studied this issue for years with the Redevelopment Authority, with the Port Authority, in my current job where I'm actually providing funding and assistance for people to do adaptive reuse projects. I actually had someone from the city, after I wrote a letter to the editor supporting adaptive reuse of projects, stick his finger in my chest and try to start an altercation with me. I've supported historic preservation every year I've been here. So it's really disturbing to hear this, well, we're going to involve you. Well, you'll have a chance to comment. Well, we haven't had a chance to comment. The things I've heard from the meeting was Mr. Hagan, Mr. Hagan, Mr. Hagan. Yeah, I know Tom Hagan is buying properties in our neighborhood. He owns 13. There's 26 homes on my block, and we haven't been afforded the courtesy of a meeting, even though I've been asking for one for years. And I don't understand it at all. But back in 2014, this Preservation Erie, Dave, Melinda, and some others who wanted to make our block the first overlay district in the city. And they did it not by bringing us all together and talking about it first. They did it without talking to us. It was a sneak attack. We pushed it back. When we talked about it as a block, we kind of had some doubts. We needed some more information. 8 years of pushing back against this. But we really wanted more information, and we're not getting that. Then I hear that, well, we're supposed to initiate historic districts. And I just made notes from the meeting that you had, one after the other. Well, who wants this West 6th Street Historic District to be the first one? No opposition. Maybe we should talk to the people that live there first. There's over 100 property owners that live in the federal district. None of them know what's going on. And I get tired of being the point person and looking like I'm just like an idle complainer. You know, Edward Glaser is he's an economist. He's a pretty good one. He's at Harvard, and he'll talk about municipal finance a lot. And there are two things that lower the value of property. One is excess taxation, and we've got that already. Check the box for that one. The other one's excessive regulation. And if you think that a block like ours, which has average appreciation rates of 2%, give me $200,000. I'll get you 2% in 20 years. Do you want that deal? That's the deal that I have. And now you want to tell me, maybe, maybe not. I have to put a copper gutter back up when I replace my roof? That's $15,000. Nobody other than a billionaire would do that. I think Mr. Hagan even said, I'm not going to get my money back. And then you're going to dangle some money in front of us? I know as an administrator of funds, that's going to be very difficult for us. When I was at Preservation Erie, I really felt that we should do education, technical assistance, and provide financial assistance. And I was the only one. And I eventually just stopped because I wasn't getting anywhere. Obviously, it wasn't that persuasive. But I really think that that's something that needs to be addressed first, other than, of course, talking to us. You have to talk to us. Why you won't talk to us? Are you afraid of us? Yeah, we might be opposed to it, absolutely. But if you don't talk to us, what do you think we're going to do? You're pushing us in the corner, and there's only one way out, and that's hire an attorney. Some people in the block have actually talked about it. I don't want to hire an attorney. You think I want the city to pay for a solicitor to defend this? Isn't there something that we could resolve together? Couldn't we ask Mr. Hagan to establish a fund for us? My solution would be put a fund together, help us design the facades that you want. Seems that that's the only thing you really want. And then we'll sign an agreement to maintain our properties for 25 years, and everybody wins, and we still have our property rights. The whole thing about using zoning for aesthetics is really kind of a despicable thing in this country. It really has a visceral reaction among property owners. And it started in 1954 with a Supreme Court case, Berman versus Parker. They took Berman's property because it wasn't pretty enough in District of Columbia, and they gave it to somebody else. But the thing that nobody really remembers about it is that 97% of the people in Berman's property were black. Aesthetics and zoning started out as a racist urban renewal scheme, and we've continued to do that. Who do you think is going to buy property that are overregulated and expensive to maintain? Do you want us to move out of the neighborhood? We've been the caretakers of these homes that you point to all the time and say, oh, look at the pretty houses. But we're the ones doing the work. You know how hard it is to get a door or a window for a building like ours? Or finding a contractor that knows how to work with copper or slate? It's extraordinarily difficult. I've done as much work as I can in my house, but we're sort of at our wits' end. So, just to conclude, I really think that before you continue, and it looks like you've already sort of made up your minds, but before you continue, I ask you to put the brakes on and meet with us. Not just our block, excuse me, but everybody in the West 6th Street National Register Historic District. Have a meeting. I challenge you, have a meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lori Lesueur, and I live at 650 West 7th Street, also in Garden Court.
Lori, could you spell your last name for me?
Lesuer.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to come up and introduce myself and to tell you that I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation with you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers for the public comment session? Okay, we will then close that period of the meeting and move on to old business. And first on the agenda for the old business, we have information on the request for proposal that was published for soliciting proposals from qualified consulting firms for the historic preservation plan.
Yes, so just an update on that. Excuse me. The proposal submission deadline is this Friday, the 11th. We've had, upon the publication of the request for proposals, we've had several consulting firms show interest and will most likely submit proposals. As of today, we have one submission, and that was sent in this morning from an ML Dennis consulting firm out of South Dakota. They saw the publication on PreserveNet and submitted a proposal. I have just done a brief scan. I don't intend to really go deeply into those until the deadline is met, and then we'll send those out to everybody to review for consideration. With that being said, I think we wanted to maybe talk about the review process for that. We did create a committee with Dave and Melinda, Kathy, and myself to kind of review the request for proposals before it was sent out. If we want to continue with that committee to review documentation or review the proposals submissions, we can do that. If we would like to make this a job of the commission in its entirety, that is okay as well. I'm open for suggestions. But once we receive all the submissions, I'll send those out to everybody who's interested in the committee to review those. So we do have some interest. I'm looking forward to getting more submissions. I suspect Thursday and Friday my email will probably blow up a little bit. That's what I'm expecting anyway. So that's the update we have as of right now in terms of the historic preservation plan creation.
Do we have opinions from the commission, whether or not the commission members would prefer to have the full commission review submitted proposals, or to work with the small committee that was put forth to review the draft of the RFP and get it ready for publishing? Does the commission members have a preference?
I was going to say we could review it ahead of time and kind of just point out pros and cons of each, but have everybody get a chance to review them all. But we could submit maybe a report saying the pros and cons of what we think of what we see. Since we were more involved, it's possible. But everyone should be able to be reviewing everything. I would think, the entire committee. Does that make sense?
Mark and Jeff?
I'm sorry, Dave, I was writing. You said you are in favor of everyone reviewing? And
Yeah, everyone review them all, but the committee could look at the with the submittals and discuss the pros and cons and kind of communicate that to the whole group.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
That's fine.
And Jeff, you too? Okay. So the full committee, or the full commission, will receive copies of submitted proposals, but the committee will review kind of separately the proposals in depth and prepare a recommendation for the commission as a whole.
And just one point of clarification, would you prefer if I sent those out as they came in, or would you prefer if I waited and sent them after the deadline?
I'd wait.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
It'd be confusing if you don't.
And another point of clarification, do you want those hard copy or digital?
I wanted digital.
Yeah,
Digital.
our RFP is pure digital, and actually we've gotten some appreciation that it is purely digital. So, I mean, I could print copies if need be, but
Yeah, I just want to make sure. Okay, good.
So once everyone reviews and makes the comments, what happens after that?
we'll have to, I'll have to look back at the RFP again. I don't think we set a hard date for making a selection. I think that's just kind of as we go. I would think it would have to be before the April meeting, or maybe it is the April meeting where we decide on a consulting firm, and then we will notify them and then create the contract after they're selected. So perhaps April meeting, we can put on the agenda to make the final selection.
So we would make our comments, submit them to you, and then
Yes.
we would get to review
And-
everybody else's comments,
Yes.
and then make a final, it would be a formal vote?
Yeah, I think so. Does that sound appropriate, Melinda?
It does indeed, yes.
Okay, and if we need to create some sort of meeting between here and our next meeting to kind of go over pros and cons for each or discuss these, that's fine too. We can do that. But we can decide that after the 11th, I suppose.
Is there anything further with that agenda item? Moving on, we've got,
Sorry, Melinda, I just also want to point out, there may be an opportunity where you would prefer to interview some of them, so you would be making that decision at the April meeting. So just give yourself enough flexibility if you want to bring a few in. You'll have time to do that.
see, I was actually thinking that would happen before the April meeting. If we did indeed want to interview anyone, but that was,
I know in our proposal this morning, that I received this morning, there was an offer to do a Zoom meeting beforehand. So if we end up deciding there's 2 or 3 consulting firms that look good, and if we want to do a Zoom interview with them, I think that would be appropriate. Maybe if it's necessary, do we want to create an interview committee, or do we want to include all the members to kind of interview a select few of these submissions?
quite frankly, I myself have never chosen a consultant without an interview.
I would agree. You'd want to interview a few of them, and we can look at how we'll get that scheduled. Or you may choose that your April meeting is your interview date. You could do that as well, and then if you felt like you could select after the interview. I'm just worried, a little concerned with the timing. If we're not getting everything out until next Monday, that is it's 3 weeks before you're making a decision. I don't know that you have enough time if you have to follow up and contact references and things like that. We can figure that out. Let's put a schedule together. We'll do that by Thursday, Chris.
Yeah, we can do that.
And we'll put a proposed schedule together when we think these things can happen. We'll also do a scoring sheet so we know what we're looking for.
I do want to add, while we're doing that, when publishing this RFP, I published them in several places. We use the Pennsylvania SHPO's list of consultants. I also published on a Historic Preservation Professionals Facebook page, and on PreserveNet and a few other places. And the feedback I've gotten so far is that people are hearing what we're doing in Erie, the creation of the CLG, and they're pretty impressed. They're also impressed by the use of ARP funds. We're kind of on the cutting edge in terms of using ARP funds for historic preservation, so that's pretty amazing. We haven't set those parameters yet for that funding, but that'll be coming in the next few weeks. So, but people are taking notice, and I had a conversation with Bill Callahan this morning, and it's certainly getting out that we're doing some things here. So, go team.
Very good. Is there anything else about the proposal review for the historic preservation plan? Okay, moving on then to the grant that was submitted to the Keystone Historic Preservation Grant, our planning grant program, seeking funds for the citywide survey.
Yes, so last month we did vote on submitting an application to Pennsylvania SHPO for a Keystone Historic Preservation Planning Grant. We already have one, and that's going towards creating the preservation plan. This one will be specifically for a comprehensive citywide survey. We will also be pursuing a CLG grant to kind of couple those together to create a survey. Survey is a little more extensive. This is a comprehensive survey. One is, I don't necessarily think has been done in the city of Erie. There have been county surveys, but not one specifically focused on the built environment of Erie. And that will streamline a lot of things, both for projects in the city. It'll streamline things in terms of being a CLG. It'll streamline Section 106 reviews. There are just multiple things that a survey would help us do and would streamline. And so, anyway, the Historic Preservation Planning Grant, the Keystone Historic Preservation Planning Grant was submitted last Tuesday. I forwarded everybody the application that was sent. And so we look to hear back. I can't remember the date on when we'll hear about.
Typically it's July.
July. Yeah, I think that's when the last one was. So we should hear by July if we get that grant or not. And then I'll be applying later this month, first part of April, for the CLG grant. And we have kind of the thumbs up from Bill Callahan for doing a survey as well. He was really glad that that's what we're approaching, getting ready to do. It'll just make things, streamline things quite a bit.
I had a quick question, Melinda, if you don't mind, about the grant. Just a clarification. I do recall that doing a complete citywide survey was probably going to be beyond what the grant would pay for. If I'm not mistaken, we were going to phase this. Is that still the understanding, or do you think that the total $50,000 would pay for an entire citywide survey?
That was actually my follow-up question,
Okay.
because I didn't know what conversation you've had so far with Bill.
Well, with matching grants, we'll have a little more than 50,000, or matching funds will have a little more than 50,000. My conversation with Bill is that would probably suffice to do a survey, but the survey itself is not going to be quick. I think there'll be phased sections of it. Because it is, I don't know how many buildings are in the city of Erie, but we're talking about surveying each and every one of them. I think time-wise or timeline-wise, there'll be there'll be phases, and it may be that the research I've done is that with the grant funding and the matching funds, we'd be pretty close to meeting what's required to do a survey. I think timeline-wise is where we're going to get into a phase. Into phases. So this grant or this project may stretch out over a couple years, probably longer, a little longer than the preservation plan would be my summation.
And so the CLG grant can serve, because the CLG grant is federal funding, can it be used to match then the Keystone grant, which is state funding?
It can't be used to match. We'll have to have matching funds for both. But the CLG grant is not a complete 50-50 match. I don't know the percentages on that for this particular project. Keystone, I believe, is a 50-50 matching grant. So we'll have to match the Keystone grant. CLG grant will also have to match, but it won't be as much as the Keystone grant. I'm wanting to say 10%, but it may also be 25% matching grant. I can't remember off the top of my head what those are.
And we would ask, we would put that in our budget for
Yes.
next year, much like we did this year for the Keystone Grant, is to have the match already in place.
The phasing of the time, or the phasing of the project itself, though, that will be done at a later stage in partnership with the consultants?
I think so. I think we'll have a rough timeline schedule when we do the RFP,
Okay,
but the actual completed, detailed timeline schedule will probably be completed after a consultant is chosen and we work out the details of the contract.
okay. Any questions about the potential survey work? No, okay. Moving on to C then. Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about the training opportunities?
Sure, so I'm taking up all the agenda today.
This is great.
So again, this is kind of piggybacking on what we talked about last month when I'd had the conversation with the representative from the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, which we are now part of, a member of. We talked about wanting to establish a training. I wanted to come back to this meeting and talk about potential schedules on when we would want to do this. The NAPC, their camp training sessions, like we talked about last month, go anywhere from introduction to historic preservation and historic commissions all the way to some more advanced topics. The camp that we would choose would be kind of an introduction. There'd be some section on preservation law. There'd be kind of an introductory or a hands-on section that would have kind of some mock exercises so that commission members, community leaders, city council, elected officials can kind of understand the process of what the Historic Review Commission is. And the particular class will be based upon our zoning ordinance that created the commission, as well as our bylaws and rules of procedure. So they would be created specifically for us, and it would be a hands-on opportunity for those participants. Again, the cost is depending upon how we want to do the training. A virtual training training session is $5,000. That includes 3 trainers and I think 6 sessions, if I remember correctly. They are only doing virtual up until this summer. And then after, I think, the July, which is the month for their meeting, their conference, they're going to start doing in-person training or hybrid trainings. There's been some kind of suggestion or discussion about doing kind of a hybrid training and waiting till we can do a hybrid in-person / hybrid training. That would be a little more expensive, and it would come in at $7,000. The good news is that, again, I had a discussion with Bill Callahan this morning to kind of flesh out details on how we could benefit from being a CLG in terms of training. There are CLG Scholarship Grants available. These are small grants specifically for training. And they will pay up to $5,000, but he also suggested that they would also potentially bump that up a little bit if we needed it to. There's a real ring. I don't know if that's So what we would do is after tonight's meeting and our discussion about the training, I would be submitting a CLG scholarship grant application.
Mm-hmm.
It's a rolling grant fund, so there's no deadline. It's throughout the year. There is a limited pot of funding, so the sooner we get the application in, the better. Yes, 5,000 is the max, but he said they can bump that up if it doesn't completely match what's the payment requirement. Up until the summer. They didn't say a specific deadline. However, they did say July is kind of an off-limits month because that's the month of their conference, and so all their focus is on doing the conference for July. After that, there is, I believe, is when they're going to start doing in-person or hybrid training sessions. It would be, it would be like our meetings here. So it'd be both in person and it would be including on Zoom. So there'd be a Zoom link for those participants who want to join. Trainers would be in person, yes. I do also need to include or remind that the training session includes up to 30 participants. If we want to go beyond 30, it's $25 per person. Yeah, sure. Technical difficulty. Okay. Thank you, Frank. That's much better. So yeah, again, 30 people. So we would like to include elected officials. We would like to include community leaders, community organizations to do the meeting as well. I think that would benefit everybody involved that has a stake in preservation in Erie. My thought is that we would look at August or September for the training. Right now, the next few months are kind of busy with the preservation plan, grants, conferences, things like that. So it's kind of some busy few months. And there'll be several public meetings in the next few months. So I think scheduling for August or September would be appropriate. Once it's decided that we want to do this and we have the funds in place, we'll develop a contract with the NAPC and set actual training guidelines and the classes that would be offered or the sessions that would be offered and things like that. So details on what the training would include would be decided after we've decided to actually schedule the training session. On top of that, I also wanted to talk about the CLG. This is kind of similar or related. The CLG scholarship funds can also include travel to attend the National Alliance Preservation Commission's conference in July. We can apply for those funds. So I know we've talked about, I'll be participating. And I know we'd like to have some members attend as well if possible. We can use these scholarship funds. We can apply for these scholarship funds as well to pay for HRC members to attend the conference. I think it's pretty beneficial. I think it'd be a lot to kind of learn and discuss at these meetings. So especially as a new commission, I think it'd be a really great thing if we could have some participants for that conference.
So the request maximum is 5,000 with the potential that the SHPO could potentially increase it based on our needs. Are we able to only submit one scholarship grant per year?
No. We can apply for, what I understood from Bill is that we can apply for both funding for our camp session and for attendance to the conference. So, like I said, it's a rolling grant. There is only so much funds available, so it's kind of first come, first serve. So the earlier we get these applications in, the better it is for us.
That makes sense.
And to build on that a little further, I did send out the email last week about a free webinar from the NAPC that talks about some, it's hosted by the NAPC. It's going to be presented by Robin Ziegler, who is with the Nashville Metro Historical Commission. Robin's a very good presenter, and she has decades of experience in commission work in Nashville. And it'll be talking about some of the legal challenges that they faced and some of the pros and cons of what's happening with their commission. It's a much larger commission than ours, certainly, but we can certainly learn from that. So I'll be participating in that. I think Kathy signed up as well. If anybody else wants to, the sign-up process is a little goofy. So if you need help with that, if you want to participate, I'm happy to help. And again, it's no cost because we are members of the commission. But when you sign up, it'll try to charge you $10, so you have to put in a code. So it's kind of a goofy little process, but it is free of charge for commission members or for the NAPC members.
Very good. Do you intend to submit the CLG Scholarship Grant for the training?
Within the next week or two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we need to choose, if we need to choose which training, I would be in favor of the kind of the broad,
Yes.
the introductory.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think that's what we've discussed, and and I don't have it in front of me. There are a couple of classes that we can add additional that are new sessions.
Excellent.
I can't remember their topics offhand, but I thought here they were very vital, I think, to new commissions. And so I think it'd be really great. So it'd be an introductory meeting, and we can do these camp sessions every year, every other year, however often we want to.
Very good.
So Bill Callahan said that they are big fans of NAPC and the camp sessions. They're just really highly rated and fantastic. So
Awesome. Any further discussion on that topic?
I think it's great to get as much knowledge as possible.
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so moving on to the next item on the agenda then is we had the discussion around the public outreach component of creating a new historic overlay district. And so I'm not sure, Chris, are you starting this? Am I starting this? How are we
I can do it if you would
approaching this?
like. However you want to do it, it's fine with me.
I think you've had the microphone for most of the meeting. I have no issues with you continuing.
Fine, that's fine with me. I'm happy to be the face of that. Just wanted to clarify some misgivings about our last meeting and clarify what the purpose of that discussion was. So in our agenda, it is in our agenda, which is posted on our webpage, that we were going to talk about certain districts within Erie and talk about some strategy on how to approach those. Since these are our first districts, it kind of felt our bylaws and rules of procedure, which are available for anybody to look at on our webpage, outlines a procedure for creating historic districts. It is not an immediate creation. It takes months, and it's designed that way. Our last meeting, I put together, as per the agenda, three selections or three potential historic overlay, locally designated historically designated districts. All of these districts were current National Register districts. And I presented those choices, and then as has been the discussion, there's been a lot of discussion since my beginnings here in October about 6th Street. And that included a tour of what's happening on 6th Street, where we didn't, in that meeting, discuss any districts or anything like that. But it has been very clear that there was a desire by certain parties to create a district on West 6th Street. So our discussion last month was based upon strategy. This was a very informal preliminary discussion. As per our guidelines, those mandate public meetings, those mandate preliminary discussions, pre-application discussions with myself as the planner to discuss districts, creation of districts. This one, because they're the first districts, require some strategy in terms of whether we recruit a district and how do we approach that. And our meeting or our discussion last month was kind of centered on that. And there was discussions about, Mr. Hagan's involvement in West 6th Street and things. But there was some misconceptions about what we were talking about. And, again, our agenda was fairly clear. I thought our discussion was fairly clear. So I was a little shocked that there were some misgivings. So we've talked about it, and we want to be careful about how we talk about the creation of districts, because we don't want there to be a misconception that we are doing this under the table, that we are doing this quickly. By design, our bylaws mandate that we have public meetings. Those include initial informal meetings with community leaders. I've had the chance to talk with Anna a couple times, including after our last meeting. And I talked to Ms. LeSueur as well just last week. And so we know that there's some misgivings out there, and we want to help clear those because we don't want to be, it's not my goal as a historic preservation planner and kind of the face of historic preservation for the city of Erie to misguide anybody, but we want to be open and transparent as much as possible. And so we are scheduling meetings. We will be meeting I know with a committee with the OWB on the 24th to talk about what a district means, how we're going to create it, the process of creating a historic district. Again, all those things are outlined on our rules of procedure, which is on our website. So last month was not a way to create a district. No district was created. There was no vote to create a district. It was a discussion of a vote to how to recruit or approach creating a district. With that being said, there's also been some suggestion that we approach several potential districts. So this Friday, I'll also have discussions with Heather Casper, with Sisters of St. Joseph Network, and a couple residents and homeowners in the current National Register West 21st Street District. And we'll be talking about the potential, what a district means, and how to create it, and if it's beneficial or not. That meeting is just an informal meeting between myself and Heather and these other two community leaders on potential of creating a West 21st Street Historic District. And we'll also have some meetings coming up, including as many public meetings as possible about a potential West 6th Street District. So if things work out and things look good, we could potentially have two locally designated historic districts by the end of the year. This would take months to do. At the earliest, we wouldn't have a district until August, July or August, because it requires the preliminary meetings. It requires an application. It is a mandated public meeting after the application is created and submitted. Then there's public comment sections for the historic preservation, the historic review commission meetings. Then it goes to planning commission for discussion. Then it goes to city council for ultimate approval. And in each of those steps will be opportunities for public comment. One of the other things I wanted to address, I know there is some, there is some desire to see our meeting times changed for the HRC. And I certainly understand that. And perhaps when we develop a schedule for next year, we can change the times to be more accommodating. At the same time, even though we can't change those meeting times now, my phone, my email, my office is always open to anybody who wants to come and discuss what's happening concerning historic preservation in Erie. I've all the time wanting to make that known, that if you have an issue, I am more than happy to talk with you, more than happy to discuss what's happening. Any plans or ideas that anybody might have, I have an open door policy. So I am happy to hear those discussions and talk about what's happening with historic preservation in Erie. With that being said, we do have some upcoming meetings. Some are waiting to be scheduled. We're just kind of finalizing some dates and some times. And so we'll be having those meetings within the next month or so. I would suspect that we'll at least have some meetings of some kind. Some are going to be more preliminary, include some group discussions amongst groups and organizations. Some will be with actual residents and homeowners. One will include an entire West 6th Street preliminary public meeting to kind of talk about everything that's happening and the proposal of a potential historic district. So those things are happening, and they're not happening because there were some misgivings. They're happening because that's what is required by our rules of procedure. And some of these preliminary meetings, pre-application meetings are happening, and I think they're necessary. That's why we required them, a preliminary meeting, pre-application, to kind of hash out some of the details. So we'll be having those meetings. We'll be having a lot of discussions. And on top of that, in the coming months, we'll also be having public meetings concerning our historic preservation plan. Once the consultant is chosen for that, we'll be having public meetings for that. We are scheduled to present a section for the Hist Erie week that is happening, hosted by the library. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity. I know the last few months we haven't been in the public eye as much. We've been kind of creating our foundation for creating a historic commission, building those bylaws and rules of procedure, and we're just beginning the discussions of historic districts and what they mean. So we're not going to create them immediately. We're not going to create them without notice. These things will take place. And I understand there's not everybody's going to be in support, and that's fine. That's okay. But we certainly want to have those discussions as we go along and as we move along. So I don't know that there's anything to really, I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have about what's happening. But like I said, we are having upcoming meetings about West 6th Street. We're also having upcoming, at least a preliminary discussion about a West 21st Street district. And also I think there's been some discussion about just individual landmarks as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because
Yes.
that's what was floating through my mind.
And so actually I had a discussion with Bill this morning about, forgive me, I can't remember her name, but somebody who has some connection to the lighthouse here in town. We talked about that would be a great local landmark designation, and there's lots of other places in Erie to consider for just individual landmark. But that, again, even those go to the same process of creating a district. There's public meetings, there's discussions before anything happens, and it's not a quick process. It is a very lengthy process, and it's designed to be so. So we can hopefully kind of hedge off some of the misgivings, misconceptions, concerns that may happen. So again, open door policy, I'm happy to discuss what's happening anytime with anybody. So any questions or concerns about that?
Thank you for that. Do we have questions, comments from the rest of the commission?
No questions here. I just want to compliment Chris for answering all the questions that are out there. I think he well said in kind of laying out the issues, laying out the questions, and responding. I know there has been the issues that come up, so of course we always wanted to clarify at that last meeting if there were issues. Maybe we should have clarified it then, but now is better than ever to
certainly, and I appreciate it. And I want to address that too. I think we could have done a better job of carefully constructing that argument last month, and even in the agenda, because I can see where that could cause some misgivings, and for that's partially my fault because I created the agenda. But hindsight's 20/20, and we learn from as we go. We're still very new. The commission is not even a year old, and so there's a learning process, and creating these districts is a learning process, and we want to learn from everybody. We want to learn from everybody who has a stake in these districts, residents, owners, whoever it might be, whoever has a stake in these districts, potential districts. We want to hear from them. We want to learn from them. And we will learn from our meetings, and we'll learn from our mistakes that we may make.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you, Chris. We don't have any other, do we have any, jumping then to new business, is there anything that we would like to discuss that is not on the agenda with regards to new business?
Yes, I think there was some, we have had talk in the past few weeks about the role of the commission and myself as a historic preservation planner in Section 106 reviews. We are having those discussions. I'm not sure yet how that will work out. It'll probably be similar to what's happening now. I have to have discussions with Jenna, is it Jenna Solomon with the SHPO?
It is.
About kind of how they perceive our roles. I talked with Bill Callahan this morning. He doesn't want, he would suggest that things continue as they are, with the exception of me being kind of the person who submits these reviews, so everything's uniform, everything is in order. Having previous experience doing 106 reviews for the state of Alabama, I know what Section 106 is, how it works, and so me kind of being the contact person or the person that these reviews filter through, I think works pretty well. We just haven't, I think, developed a final procedure as to how that's going to work.
You want to tell them the whole thing?
Yes, so that's what, thank you, Jeff, for reminding me. So Section 106 is a review process that was created by the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. And it is a process by which any federally funded or permitted project triggers a review to ensure that historic or cultural resources are not harmed or affected by these federal projects. And if they are, that there is a mitigation procedure. So the city uses a lot of HUD grants, CDBG funds. Those trigger 106 reviews, and most of those are pretty simple. Most of the time, they don't involve or cause any adverse effect to historic structures or cultural sites, archaeological sites, but sometimes they do. And that process kind of helps determine what affects historic sites and what doesn't, and if there is an effect, to mitigate it. That's it in a nutshell. That being said, we also expected, or I expected, that because we're using ARP funds, that would trigger 106 reviews, because it is federal funding. However, as is confirmed by Jenna with the SHPO, ARP funding will not trigger Section 106 reviews.
I think we were all surprised by that one.
Very surprised, and it came down from the Advisory Council for Historic Preservation, which is the President's Advisory Council for Historic Preservation. Very shocked to hear that, not as surprised. However, if ARP funds are used in conjunction with any other federal funds or permits, it does trigger a 106 review. The Advisory Council, Jenna Solomon with the Pennsylvania SHPO is the one who confirmed it, and she sent me a link to the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation. I can certainly forward that along to everybody. I mean, it's technical historic preservation language. It's a little dense, but in a nutshell, it says that ARP funds do not trigger. I just want to get her name. Yeah, Jenna Solomon. Solomon. I hope. I'll confirm it when I look at her email. But yeah, so yes. So hopefully, and when we do this survey, I mean, even though it's going to take a while, that survey will help streamline 106 reviews, to be sure, and make things so much easier for those involved. Kind of in conjunction with that, I'll be meeting, I think it's March 31st, where Bill Callahan and the National Register reviewer for the SHPO for this part of Pennsylvania will be in town, and we'll be talking about National Register districts. A lot of our most of our districts need an upgrade, need to be updated because they're very old. And so we'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about the survey and the identification of new potential historic resource, National Register eligible resources. If those are identified, there's also CLG funds to update National Register nominations or create National Register nominations. So we'll be having that discussion about National Register and Erie with Bill and Jenna, or not Jenna, I forget her name, but Bill on March 31st. So I think that's it.
Fantastic.
I had an update too, Melinda, real quick.
Yeah.
If you don't mind. Just wanted to update the Review Commission on the status of the city's ARP funding. As you recall, the city received just over $76 million coming down in 2 tranches. As part of that funding, $15 million is going to the city's redevelopment authority, and a portion of that funding will be in a historic preservation grant for local property owners. That grant has yet to be established, but it will be earmarked just specifically for properties that are located within locally designated districts. So it would be important for us to get those districts, those locally designated districts, in place as soon as possible. There is just over $840,000 that will be available for direct grants to property owners who are in those districts. These grants will be eligible for property owners, whether it's residential or non-residential, both. But they will have, the one qualifier is they will have to be in a locally designated district. So unfortunately, Mr. Maggio left as I was announcing that we actually did create a grant program, as he had suggested that Preservation Erie should. It is our hope that the $15 million that's going to the city's redevelopment authority will go into a number of different housing programs, one of which is this grant program. It is our hope that once this grant program is up and established, that additional fundraising can happen to continue to fill that fund for many years to come. But at least this gives us a starting point. So more to come on that, and I've asked Chris to work with Aaron Snippert, our Executive Director of the Redevelopment Authority, to develop those guidelines, and in fact, I believe he will probably be the reviewer of the applications, as will the HRC, the approver of the applications for those grants. So more to come on that. I just wanted to let you know that that was happening. Subrecipient agreement with the Redevelopment Authority is in place, so funding will start flowing to them very, very soon.
Kathy, can you remind us of the timing on that? I think you may mention it a little bit. What's the timing then?
We had to get the subrecipient agreement in place. That took a little bit longer, and we'll just have to, once they get the funding in the next couple of weeks, and they won't get all of the funding at once, so it'll just be a portion. I'm not exactly sure what percentage will be in this year for those grants.
So you'd have to have the district in place, and then have the application process for the...
Yeah, we'll have the application process in place before I'm sure we have districts approved by the timeline that Chris has given us. But that gives us some time, because they've got a whole lot of programs to develop. The Redevelopment Authority will have a lot of programs to develop to deploy that $15 million, but there's a lot of flexibility. The only other requirement other than a local designated district is it will have to be located in a qualified census tract. But that, at this point, with the ones that we have discussed, that there's some interest in pursuing, all of those are in a QCT or a qualified census tract. So this is all good things. It's just over 840,000 that will go out in direct grants. The rest it will help to pay administration of the program.
And I just wanted to kind of add to that a little bit. The guidelines, I'll be working on those this week, so hopefully by the next meeting we'll have some guidelines in place for the grant funding for those. Also, I just wanted to kind of reiterate that Erie is really on the cutting edge of using ARP funds for historic preservation. I've heard that from many people. I actually approached a historic preservation professionals group for advice on guidelines to use. If anybody else had, nobody else is using ARP funds like this. We are really quite fortunate, and we're really on the cutting edge of using these funds specifically for small grants in locally designated historic district. It's pretty unprecedented. It's on the cutting edge, and so Erie should be really proud of that, of being able to have that kind of funding for these types of projects. And I think will help in the creation of these districts as well, to have some of that money in place, while we're also seeking out other potential funding opportunities as well.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Unless we have any other items on the agenda, I'd just like to say thank you to Chris, thank you to Kathy, and we will officially entertain a motion to close the meeting at 5:05 p.m. Oh, Dave.
Just one more quick question. We talked about the timing of these meetings. I mean, I know we'll discuss that. We'll look at what everyone else is doing, but what would a better time be? Sometime not after 5 o'clock or 5:30. That's kind of the whole point of the question, correct?
I would guess it would either be first thing in the morning before work begins, or over the lunch hour perhaps, and or an evening, like an after work meeting. I'm guessing those would be the preferred times.
Yeah, I mean, and we can't really do anything to change it because the schedule's already been made and published for the year. But again, to kind of add on to what I said earlier, if somebody's unable to make the meeting but wants to participate in some way, I will entertain every opportunity or every suggestion possible to make sure that their concerns, their support, or their voices are heard in these meetings. So if they want to submit a video that we can play to the commission, I'm happy to do that. If they want to submit a letter and they can't attend, I'm happy to do that. However they want to participate and they can't come to the meeting or tune in on Zoom, I'm happy to make sure that voices are heard so that nobody's missed. And in whatever capacity that is. So
Chris,
again,
on the website, your phone number's there, your email's there.
Yes, yes.
Is there a Q&A on the website? I forgot. I'm just trying to figure out everything that's available.
Not on our city webpage. I believe there is on our Facebook page. I'm still working on our Facebook page, and it's still evolving. We're getting new likes all the time. But I can, if I haven't, I'll create a Q&A. There's definitely messaging through our City of Erie Historic Review Commission Facebook page, so they can message that way.
So I forgot about Facebook. So there's really like 12 ways to get a hold of you,
yes,
or
absolutely.
to comment.
And I think the Our city website is a little difficult to navigate. I've heard from several people it's hard to find contact information. So I'd like to find a way to update that so that my information is clearly visible and present. Because I am happy to be the face person, the face of preservation for the Historic Review Commission. So if anybody has issues at all, I'm happy to. I have a work cell phone. You can always get in touch with me. You can text me. You can call me within certain hours. I'm not going to answer you at 3 o'clock in the morning. You wouldn't want to talk to me at 3 o'clock in the morning anyway. But there are multiple ways to get in touch with me, and I try to make it clear as I possibly can, or make those opportunities clear, so that anybody can reach out at any time.
So we could revisit that
Yes,
toward the end of the year then? Okay.
absolutely.
That's it.
4 o'clock is great for me, I'm just saying. I know that a lot of other people have different schedules, but this is a perfect schedule for me. So, but I'll adapt to whatever anybody says. But I heard the discussion, and I'll do it anyways, says.
Thank you, Mark.
But I think 4 o'clock's great. It's worked out so far, pretty much. Nobody's seemed to have a hard time doing it in the committee.
No. I'm looking for you, for anyone, well,
Just
sorry.
before we close out, I just want to say, I want to thank everybody. I'm happy to have a public comment section. I'm glad people are utilizing it. I'm really happy to see that. That's what we want.
Yeah.
No matter what the comments are, no matter what's being heard, I am really happy that people are participating and speaking up. So I just want to thank everybody for their participation.
I'm sorry, I'm just thinking of the 5:30. We'll entertain a motion if someone would like to make a motion to close.
Oh, there's another meeting. Okay.
There's another meeting at 5:30, yes. I'm so sorry to feel like it's rushing through, but if we are ready, we'll entertain a motion.
Adjourn. How's that?
Wonderful. Mark motions to adjourn. That's exactly what I needed. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Dave seconds. All in favor, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful.
Good to see you guys.
Great meeting.